Alpine winds cascade down the treacherous slopes of a foreboding mountain range to batter the bonfires of the open-air training grounds of the Sanctum of the Diamond Mind. Its inhabitants spar late into the night in tests of endurance and willpower. Bloodied training dummies crafted from quebracho, translated to axebreaker wood, stand in vigil like silent sentinels among the initiates. Many sit hunched around the fires, tending to their bleeding knuckles and ravaged fingers, wrapping them with gauze in tender care. It's Hell Month at the monastery, as the initiates are subjected to the ancient trials of the monks. Many don't last this long, instead washing out or becoming relegated to laborers on the grounds if they wish to stay. The path to enlightenment can take many forms, but among this discipline, focus on controlling the mind and the body's key energy reigns supreme. However, one cannot learn these secrets without first overcoming one's corporeal body. That is exactly the point of these rigorous challenges. And so, as the night ticks on, so too does the sound of conditioning blows and dripping sweat droplets. What many don't know about this monastery is that it serves more purposes than one. Yes, the teachings of these monks must be taught down through the generations, but this monastery also serves the surrounding region of the Ride. Refugees, the poor, and the desperate show up at the doors of these buildings from time to time. Deeper still, this monastery was once called the Citadel of the Raven, a bastion of war, but now serves a purpose of peace. The citadel used to stretch out along the foot of the mountain range for 10 miles until it fell to ruin, and even now many structures remain in disrepair. Some have been converted into living quarters, chapels, infirmaries, and gardens. Tunnels and bridges connect some of the outlying structures, but long ago suffered cave-ins or collapse. As a recent arrival, a Tabaxi student peers out from a foggy window to watch the initiates attempt to prove their worth. His dormitory provides meager comforts as it consists of a bunk, a candle, a chair, and a wooden table, the latter upon which he is standing to see through the high window. He sighs and steps off his perch, landing silently and returns to his book. Normally, this place demands such a long commitment of time to gain access to its teachings, but Krigdorr was able to obtain one of their sacred texts. This isn't his first visit to a monastery, and that was clear to the monks at his arrival. A mug of tea sits untouched on the table, and he brings it to his nose, but the acrid smell deters him from drinking. Whatever they put in this tea doesn't agree with his Tabaxi physiology. Salvia, he thinks they called it. Restless and a bit frustrated, he slams the tome shut and pinches the candle wick, extinguishing the flame. Perhaps a new day will bring answers to his journey's questions. He lays on top of his bed, curling up to keep out the chilly night air. It isn't until the very early morning hours that he hears it again, that haunting wailing echoing through the grounds. Somewhere, something bellows roars of pain. It's not an animal, as far as Krigdorr can tell, but it isn't speaking a language that he can understand, if that is a language. He's heard some of the other students postulate it as a demon the monks have chained up in a dungeon somewhere, an immortal straggler from times long past when the citadel housed many monstrosities. Whatever it is, it remains a mystery, as the monks refuse to acknowledge its existence, and right now, all Krigdorr wants is to sleep. His eyelids feel heavy as they close, and the distant mysterious cries begin to blend in with the gentle whistling of the frosty wind. The door to his dormitory opens to a familiar sight. A wizened monk enters with the typical morning fare of bread crusts, an apple, and that wretched tea to deliver his modest breakfast. Shenzu, upon raising his gaze, sees Krigdorr looking back at him.
"Rise to meet the day. Brother Jetki wishes for you to join him in the training yard as soon as you are finished with your meal."
His bent-over body reaches over the tome Krigdorr was reading the night before to set the tray down.
You must have made quite an impression on him. I wasn't granted access to this book for 2 years upon my arrival. Yes, quite the impression.
He nods his head disapprovingly and turns to exit the dormitory.
Don't take it for granted.
He then exits the room and tends to his rolling cart, with more meager meals to deliver. It has been clear to Krigdorr that even at a place as enlightened as this one, men can still be subject to such petty emotions of jealousy and irritability. Brother Jetki stands with his arms folded across his chest, and his back to Krigdorr as he approaches. 2 other monks are with him, speaking in hushed tones as they seem to be huddled around a training dummy. Upon arrival, he politely waits for the conversation to finish and is careful to avoid eavesdropping, but his tabaxi ears cannot help but pick up a few words and phrases. Unheard of and frightening are a couple he hears of note. The 2 attending monks depart, and Brother Jetki turns to greet Krigdorr.
Good morning. I trust you slept well?
He inquires.
Of course, brother. Thank you for your hospitality. I was very comfortable.
He lies. Drawing his gaze, a broken dummy lies before the monk. Krigdorr notices that most of the pegs used for conditioning the arms and fists are broken off the dummy, and the stout upright has a large crack running up its length. Also, the sand underneath seems unusually disturbed, as if a large horse-drawn cart was dragged through here. Brother Jetki gestures to his right and leads Krigdorr away from the site.
I'm curious. Did you find our sacred text to be of use on your quest for enlightenment? No, I know you've been to other monasteries. How does it compare?
Jetki's gaze remains outwards towards the mountain.
Fascinating. Your approach to the problem of mind over matter is unique in it.
Their voices trail off as they discuss their philosophies eagerly, each with their own unique perspectives drawn from their own personal experiences. Their conversation continues into the late morning, until they come upon a derelict infirmary. Krigdorr notices a group of around 20 people inside.
Oh, I thought this building was unoccupied, brother.
He questions. He notices the structure is half collapsed on the backside, damage from a forgotten battle.
Oh, yeah. Villagers. Sad story. They arrived a couple of nights ago from Thar. There's a great scourge of violence there against the weak. Fairly common. They've managed to fortunately stick together, but I am concerned for them. They have some orphan children in there, some of whom are injured. I don't know who's going to take care of them. Unfortunately, they seem pretty content. We tried offering them more comfortable living quarters, but they refused to separate. I take that as a good sign.
Through the windows, Krigdorr can see laundry strung up inside, and the shuffling of people as they tend to each other's needs.
Such needless violence.
Krigdorr murmurs under his breath, the sight one all too familiar. As night falls, a violent wind kicks up. The prayer flags of the sanctum flap fiercely, their ends shredded by the intense force of the mountain winds. The bonfires of the training grounds are extinguished, as all-night training is cancelled due to the inclement weather. Krigdorr, in his humble room, turns the last page of his borrowed tome. Done. Another ancient tradition filled with thoughtful philosophies and insightful disciplines, but no answer to Krigdorr's questions were to be found. He lays back on his rugged bed with a sigh.
It's been a long day. So tired. I'm just gonna rest my eyes for a bit.
He thinks to himself as he drifts into unconsciousness. An ear-splitting crack tears through the dormitory. Its violence launches Krigdorr out of his bed and onto all fours. His fur stands up on end, and he looks around for the source of the noise. Were we attacked? But then he hears it. Women screaming. He smells the scent of burning wood. It's coming from outside. He throws open the room door and sprints down the hallway, barreling through the double doors of the exterior entrance. His raised fur is flattened against his body as gale force wind hits him, but he is undeterred. He pushes forward into the training yard, barely able to hear the screams above the weather, but off in the distance he can see the source. The infirmary the refugees were at is burning. An angry-looking sky of dark clouds illuminate from distant lightning, revealing the tabaxi at intervals as he sprints towards the danger. Around the monastery, additional monks, initiates, and students emerge from the structures, shouting commands to gather buckets and shovels. They all seem to fade into the background for Krigdorr. As he approaches, he can see some of the refugees emerging from the structure, while others await them outside, sobbing with tears and stress. A woman turns to him.
Please help them! My children are still in there!
With a grim nod, he enters the blaze, searching frantically for signs of life. The building must have been hit directly with a lightning bolt. All the windows are blown out, feeding the inferno with fuel. A few burning bodies can be seen trapped under timbers, but they are beyond rescue. Deeper inside, he hears a child's voice. An interior doorway is blocked by the fallen debris, but inside must be where the voice is coming from. He brings a hammer fist down upon a timber, splitting it in twain, and at the cost of some singed paws, he is able to clear the doorway and open it, to find a small boy comforting another on the ground. The prone child has tears streaming down his face as he holds his bloodied leg. A white bone protrudes from his shin.
Climb on my back. I'm gonna get you out of here.
He exclaims. The standing child climbs onto the tabaxi's back, bunching up his fur into tufts to hold onto. Krigdorr bends to pick up the injured boy and cradles him in his arms.
Now hold your breath. It's gonna get smoky, but we'll move quickly. Don't be afraid.
Turning heel, the trio fly through the tumultuous fire, leaping over furniture and through a broken window. He is met immediately by the coal-smudged hands and concerned faces of the monastery's monks. The boys are taken from him by grateful refugees, and he is led to a crate to sit and catch his breath. The monks begin bringing buckets of water to him and cupping water onto his fur. Curious, he looks down to see much of his coat is burnt. He hasn't even noticed among the flames, but his body has been scorched. The cool water lets off a gentle sizzle as he is gently doused. He coughs. All his senses begin returning to him. He inhaled a lot of smoke in there. Never underestimate the dangers of smoke in a fire, he reminds himself. He raises his head to the burning infirmary. How many didn't make it out? He can hear the remaining windows splintering against the heat of the fire. It catches his eye. From one of the rear windows near the collapsed end of the building, an object is propelled through the open window. It rolls to a stop near his feet. A doll's head. Could a child still be in there trying to signal for help? And without so much as a second thought, he is on his feet and careening to the window. He effortlessly vaults the window frame but finds himself in a dark hallway. Smoke gathered at the ceiling and billowing out of the window.
Is anyone still in here?
He croaks out. The smoke has affected his voice. He approaches an interior door and begins to open it. A burst of tumultuous flames blows the door open, filling the hallway.
Damn!
He yelps and backs further into the structure. He looks around, desperate for an escape from the backdraft. But then he feels a hand grip onto his. Startled, he looks down to see a filthy little girl in a faded yellow dress. She is holding on to the body of a well-loved doll and a small blanket. She looks up into his eyes, not saying a word, but grips onto his hand with a force stronger than a child should have.
Oh no. Little girl, it's okay. Come here. Okay, my name is Krigdorr and I'm a friend, okay? I know it's really scary in here right now, but we're gonna get to safety together. Does that sound good?
She nods her head but doesn't say a word and hugs his leg. Krigdorr picks her up and places her on his back, piggyback style, and they begin searching for another hallway, or an opening, or anything that could lead them to safety. His low-light vision can see a giant joist blocking a doorway in the collapsed area of the building. Large stones and roofing fill the spaces in between. They are trapped. After a few minutes, it becomes clear that the only way out is through the way he came in. The smoke has become so dense that Krigdorr lowers himself to all fours to keep them as much out of the smoke as possible. He can hear people shouting through the cacophony of the fire. It feels like the world is collapsing in on them. And then a shift. Dirt and plaster pelt them from above. The sound of pebbles and shifting rock falling can be heard behind them. The joist timber Krigdorr noticed earlier shifts and rises slowly. The sound of heavy breathing and grunting seem to emanate from all directions around him. His fur stands up on end. A thought crosses his mind of a looming danger, something more disturbing than choking on smoke or burning to death. The palpitations of his heart do little to mask a sense of panic creeping into his psyche. A foot shuffles into view as the timber again begins to rise. A strange boot of what seems to be composed of wrapped skins and furs tied with sinew seem to pop out from the darkness.
Am I hallucinating?
He wonders. And then another boot slides into view, attached to two mammoth-sized legs. As he follows the path of this new danger upward, though, his view is heavily obscured by the smoke. It billows and snares through this new passage that seems to be opening.
Move your ass.
A deep, gravelly voice commands from the inky darkness. And then he is through. All four of his legs pounding through the opening, the girl atop his back holding on tightly. A path like wheat cut down from a sickle lie before them through the rubble to the light beyond. Freedom. Safety. The two feel it as they exit the furnace and into the arms of the men and women of Thar. From that day, Krigdorr was lauded as a hero. His presence requested to stay as long as he wishes. His deeds remain something of legend at the sanctum of the Diamond Mine. But it wasn't long until Krigdorr was called again by his wanderlust to find answers to the questions that continue to plague his heart.